Mr. President, I come to the floor today to comment. I've heard both the chairman and the ranking member this morning giving comments about the FAA bill. And first of all, I want to thank them for their hard work and diligence in this legislation. It doesn't just come now this year. This is something that the chairman and ranking member have been working on for several years. And I had a chance yesterday to talk about the next-gen system and how many jobs are going to be created from really high-wage technology that is going to be used to modernize our transportation system. It's going to deliver flights that are probably 20% more on time. It's going to save us 5 to 6% on fuel. It's going to lower CO2, and it's going to improve the experience for passengers. So I'm all for the FAA underlying bill, and I applaud them for their hard work in trying to make this legislation a reality and doing so this week. I do have concerns about the proposed Hutchison amendment, and I know that the senator from Texas indicated that she is still talking with people and working with people and wanted to make everyone happy. And in this place, I don't think you make everyone happy, but I applaud the senator's willingness to, at least on the floor, say she's trying to work to make everyone happy, and I think she's probably sincere in her efforts. I do have a concern, having been involved with this issue now probably for 3 or 4 years myself, not just the FAA bill, but the slots issue and air transportation. And my former colleague, Senator Gordon Smith from Oregon, and I were involved in this issue, and several years before that with numerous other members of the Commerce Committee. It is probably one of the thornier issues that Congress has to deal with, and primarily because the issue is one that's fused both by issues of economic development around airports, also transportation interests of the flying public, and probably a little bit of dose of what members, own personal experiences and interests are. But for me, getting access to the West, to the nation's capital, is an important issue. It's not the primary way I come to work every week. I actually fly in and out of the other airport in the region and do so, I don't know if I'd say happily, because frankly, I think Dulles Airport is, I don't know what they've done lately with their new, they got rid of their mobile lounges and now invested in some transport system that you probably walk as far on that system as you do what the previous system is. I see people smiling on the floor because I think they've already been through it. I think they're saying, yeah, I've done that drill, and what's up at Dulles? But that aside, that's the way I fly 80% of the time back and forth to the nation's capital, and am pleased to have that flight schedule that accommodates me and actually accommodates many Washingtonians, because I think there's probably many of my Washingtonians who are coming back to the region to do business on a variety of issues in that corridor, and see that as an access point as well. The issue, though, is about whether the West has enough access to Dulles, to National Airport. And in the past 2 debates that we've had on this issue, in 2000 and 2003, the Congress decided the West did not have enough access to National Airport. And in both of those instances, this body passed legislation opening up more slots to the West through a process that the Department of Transportation basically decided what were the best areas of the West to service, who were the best networks to possibly service those areas, and how to get that traffic from one destination to the nation's capital. In both instances, 2000 and in 2003, that very broad directive was given to the Department of Transportation. Each time, 6 new flights, paths were opened up to the nation's capital. And I think that process worked very well. It worked very well because the debate was not here in the United States Senate floor about whose service was going to be delivered, but it was given to the Department of Transportation and the broad outline. In each instance, increasing access to the West, to the nation's capital, is about having the flying public access the nation's capital, and it's also about economic interests. And that's why I still have concerns about this proposal on the table and about the fair access that it is may not provide to many people in the West. This particular proposal, unlike the two previous access issues in 2000 and 2003, where in each point 6 new slots were given and the Department of Transportation had a fair and open process about it, this particular proposal focuses on the airlines that already service the nation's capital. And in this case, over 60% of the nation's capital slots are controlled by 2 specific airlines. This proposal would open those carriers' ability to trade out slots that they already have with other cities, and thereby giving them access to the West. In fact, my colleague from Texas's proposal, even on those new slots and new incumbent carriers that they're saying can give access to the West, are people who are currently operating even inside the perimeter today. So if you think that this proposal is about helping access the West, it is primarily about accessing the West for people who already control the real estate at National Airport, which is 2 carriers. Now, I noticed that the Department of Justice has looked at this larger issue. That's because for many of my colleagues who probably don't want to spend a lot of time on this, I'm actually, I guess I'm glad I'm educated on it, but I wish I had time to work on other things. The issue is that the national interest or policy question comes into play when you have access to what are limited footprint destinations, like National Airport, like LaGuardia. Those are times when the United States government has said, we want to make sure that there is a fair process about this because there's a small footprint, and obviously if somebody controls too much of that footprint, it's an issue. So in the most recent debate, Delta Airlines and US Air have been trying to do a swap exchange between LaGuardia and DCA, and the Department of Justice has basically said, not such a good idea. You already own too much of the market share. If you guys want to do something like this, why don't you divest some of the slots that you have now? And instead of doing that, the airlines, I think, are going to go down, a path of continuing to try to accumulate and dominate here in the East. So I hope my colleagues will take into consideration that I know the chairman and the ranking member are trying to work in good faith, both on this issue and to move the bill forward. But for this member who wants to see a healthy transportation network, I am very concerned about the existing incumbents at National Airport to continue to dominate with 60% of the market, and perhaps cancel a lot of flights that they currently have now within this region, only to benefit from the more lucrative long-haul flights across the country. Now, I'm for a fair process. I think everybody should be able to bid on any new flights that are going to be put on the table. And I think that the 2 processes that Congress followed in 2000 and 2003 were closer to what I believe personally is a more fair and open process. So I hope that we can, continue and working and dialoguing on these issues. I do think they're important. They're probably more important for the long run of what the transportation network and system looks like in this country, to make sure that the consumer's interests are taken care of and that there is a fair and competitive price. And I know that some of the people who've been involved in this debate, probably not here on the floor, but out in the public, are talking about the amount of money that certain airlines have invested into these airports, as if somehow that means that they own the airports. Well, I think the facts will show in both of these cases the majority of money poured into the infrastructure at both of these facilities are basically taxpayer dollars through bonding authority. So it is not as if some airline owns the rights, owns the ability to control 50 or 60% of one of these airports just because they have been paying for airport improvements. We've all been paying for airport improvements. And as I said, me personally think the airport improvements that made at Dulles aren't really so much of an improvement, but I'm going to continue to live with that and continue to fly through that particular airport. So I hope my colleagues will keep discussing this issue and hope that we can get somewhere on it. Mr. President, my concern is that proposal with conversion in it will mean many of my colleagues here on the Senate floor will have their flights canceled to their favorite locations, and basically they'll start servicing long haul across the country with a very big share of the existing national market. I hope we can do something that will instigate more competition, more diversity, and something that will help get this legislation passed. I thank the President and I yield the floor.